Welcome to Health Oddity, the show that strips away the jargon and hype surrounding all things health and fitness to help you live a long, strong and energetic life. Lining up at the bar this week, here's Peter Lant, Paul Bassett and James St. Pierre.
Hello and welcome to the Health Oddity podcast, episode 40. It is our 40th birthday today, and for our 40th birthday, we have a very special guest. But what I will do before I introduce that guest is I will introduce our usual suspects, Mr. Peter Lant.
Hello.
So,
Hello.
okay.
Hiya. How are we doing? I'm excited about this one, actually. This is going to be great.
And Mr. Paul Bassett. Say hello.
Hello. What I want to know is how has Peter managed to get a tan? See, I've not seen any sun.
That's because I'm from Newcastle. Basically, as soon as there's like a tiny bit of sunshine, I'll just go brown. It stops. It's if you're watching on camera, it's t-shirt tan. It's proper farmer's tan.
I was going to say it's also because he's got a white background behind him, so he's popping more behind him.
There is that. I'm basically I reckon from October to probably about April, I'm pasty white. And then I just go instantly brown on my face, neck and arms. And then the rest of me is still pasty white. So yeah, there you go. It's good luck. Mrs. Sean, she loves it. She loves it. She just loves it. She thinks it looks great.
Okay. And then because it's kind of a bit of a coincidence, but it's our 40th birthday today. And today we have a very, very special guest. He's joining us from the United States of America. He will tell us where exactly he's joining us from in a minute. I think it's 9 a.m. for him at the moment. It's about 3 o'clock in the afternoon for us, but it's our 40th birthday. And Mr. Jim Hatcher, who is joining us today, he will tell you how old he is, but he's nearly double that. So, and he has got a wealth and a lifetime of experience to share with us and talk to us about today. So if you just like to quickly say hello to our listeners, Jim.
Well, hello, all you listeners.
4 or 5 of you.
So Jim, I've been aware of Jim for a long, long time. I think the first time I heard about Jim and heard part of his story was, I think it might have even been on the Strength Matters podcast. And I've heard people talk about him over the years. I've heard him on a number of other podcasts over the years, and I've never heard anything but glowing things about Jim Hatcher. So I wanted to get him onto the podcast to share his journey, his story, his experience with you and with us. So without further ado, Jim, would you like just to sort of tell us, like I say, kind of where you are in the States and I suppose really a little bit about yourself and where, what you're up to now?
I think I can do that. I live just west of the city of Chicago, which is in the state of Illinois. We live in a suburb called Wheaton, Illinois. Some people would know that because it's the home of Wheaton College and where Reverend Billy Graham went to school. So there's a little bit of infamy about the community that I live in. I'm not sure they would have approved me if they had known about me before I moved in, but I think I'll cast this in sort of you used the word journey a while ago, and I think while it's a little bit of a cliche, I'll kind of talk a little bit of a journey. I was an athlete in junior high school, and college. I'm 79 years old, so that was a long time ago. When I was in high school, I was on the wrestling team, and my trainer, I say that in quotes, believed that the world of weightlifting was hammer curls. So I've been doing hammer curls for 60 some years and can't tell by looking at my biceps that they made any difference, but that was his view of training. I got bachelor's and master's degrees at a place called Ball State University in Muncie, Indiana, and then started out as a career as a college administrator. Went back to graduate school and got a doctorate in what's called university administration, and set out on a career in higher education. There was something about that was somewhat instructive, and that is that I would be at work at 7:30 in the morning and out of the office by 3:30 in the afternoon, and in the gym by 3:45, and everyone but me in the gym was a college athlete. And in some ways, that was great because I got to spend a lot of time with younger people that I had relationships with in the college, and worked weights with them. So I was working with younger guys and did that for a number of years, and got into powerlifting and got interested in competing in powerlifting. So at 45, I competed in a national powerlifting contest, finished third in the masters division. And that was, for me, what I considered a fairly significant accomplishment. Now, at 45, the school in which I was a vice president hired a new president, and he didn't like me. I didn't like him. So that's kind of strong words. Let's just say we disagreed on a number of things. So I had just finished this powerlifting meet, and I got about 5 things going through my head here. Anyway, I'll come back to one of them. We finished this powerlifting meet, and I changed jobs and became a career businessman for the rest of my life until I retired at 60. The second thought that I wanted to make about that is that the powerlifting thing was a big goal for me. And we might want to talk about goals a little bit later on, but I was a guy who always had big goals. I wanted to lift in a powerlifting meet. I wanted to go 9 for 9. I wanted to set a new PR in something, or maybe all 3 lifts. And those big goals for me were, in retrospect, an issue, because if and when you either reach one of those goals or fail, what do you do next? Well, maybe you set another goal for the next upcoming meet, or maybe you do a crash and burn. And that's what I did. I did a crash and burn. And I didn't lift weights again for nearly 15 years after that meet. Now, it wasn't so much that I had lost interest. It was that the new job was very demanding. A lot of travel, a lot of entertaining, a lot of stress. I was president of a company here in Chicago, had to move my family, and on and on and on. So there was this gap. And I was like, I just really kind of went to hell in a handbasket physically. So at 60, I retired. I was fortunate that I was able to do that. And I had to figure out, what am I going to do next? And I saw an ad in the paper that said Old Time Gym, GYM, not me, Old Time Gym. And it was kettlebells and Olympic lifting. I didn't know anything about either one of them. So I went to this place and said, can you take this old man and whip him back into shape? And the guy who ran the gym was an RKC, a really good guy. And he said, sure. And so that was my introduction to kettlebells. I'd never even seen one before then. And a couple of years later down the road, here comes the desire of another big goal. What was that? Well, maybe it was going to be RKC because I worshiped the ground on which this gym owner worked. But Strongfirst was coming into being. And so I decided that I wanted to try to just complete SFG level 1. And it was going to be a multi-year journey for me. And I didn't know a lot about either the organization or what the future might bring with it. And so I wrote to Mark Toomey, who was then head of Strongfirst under Pavel. And I said, you know, I'd kind of like to try this. I don't know how it works. I don't want to get in anybody else's way. I don't want any young person who's a trainer who's to be precluded from attending because somebody like me's in there that's not a trainer and just wants to do it for the hell of it and may or may not succeed and is taking up space. Well, he wrote me a wonderful letter back and provided me with an extraordinary amount of encouragement. And so I set out on a journey, if you will, to do SFG level 1. And so I was 72 by the time I got to the Dome in Chicago. It was the first time that they had done that here in Chicago. And it was a huge inflated dome, and there were lots and lots and lots of people, none of which I had ever seen, met, or knew anything about. And so I went through that 3 days. It was rigorous, to say the least, particularly rigorous for me. But I had a huge amount of support from the young people that were on my team cheering for the old guy. Went through all the testing. The last one was the get up, and I'd done the snatches, I'd done everything, and on the get up, I dropped the kettlebell. Why in the hell I dropped that kettlebell, I have no idea. I had never dropped one before, and I had never dropped one since. So I didn't pass. But one of the wonderful things about Strongfirst is that you can send a video in and get it approved. So a couple of days later, I did and got it approved and found out that I was the oldest person that had ever passed SFG level 1. I have no idea if that's still the case. I doubt that it is because Strongfirst has expanded exponentially around the world, and I don't think anybody follows that anymore. So the journey in the world that which you work, it was training on my own, powerlifting. My powerlifting coach, if you want to think of it that way, was a magazine, Powerlifting USA. Every month it had articles by Dr. Fred Hatfield, known as Dr. Squat at the time. If and when you talk to Ref, ask him about Dr. Squat, he can tell you about him. And so my trainer was a magazine and my own experience. Trying this, trying that, having good training partners made a big difference. But it was without any formal mentoring, if you will. Then I took sort of the hiatus and came back to kettlebells. And I'd have to say that kettlebells via the SFG route has kind of changed my life in retirement. It created a lot of opportunities for me. Chances to talk at events, meet a lot of wonderful people, do a few podcasts, and it's really been great because retirement is a time when you ought to be able to find things to do that you wish to do. And this one just jumped right out in front of me, and it's been part of the whole experience. So that's kind of the long answer to your question, but it's from junior high school to now, and that's pretty much been most of the story.
So did you go right back to near the start? I mean, did you wrestle in high school and college? Was that your sport? Yeah, in
Yes.
high school and college. Yeah, cool. And when you were kind of working in the administration department at the college, and you were going in and you know, training in, you know, after school hours, and there was there was the pupils, the students there. Were there other members of staff going in and training, or were you the only member of staff who went in there and trained with the students?
As far as the weight room, I was probably the only one. I mean, the place had swimming pool, and there were other faculty and staff people that would come and swim and so forth, but no one but me put themselves in a position of trying to go nose to nose with 230-pound tackles in the weight room. And I should have known better at the time, but it was one of those things that I loved every minute of it. And sometimes there were people who wanted to see if I could do something that I probably shouldn't have tried, but I did, and it made me feel really good in front of all those little kids. So I finally had to get over that, by the way. So
I think, Paul, do you?
Yeah, no, I was just going to ask. So you've kind of had physical activity as part of your life, you know, from an early age. But what is drawing you to being active? I mean, where does it sit in your life? What keeps you having this thirst to keep exploring it? Because, like you said, you know, a lot of people, once they retire, it's an opportunity to do lots of things, but sometimes people just wind down. Doesn't seem like you wound down at all.
Well, I would say the motivation has changed over the years. My undergraduate degree was in health, physical education, and recreation. So I sort of had a predisposition, if you will. I just never worked a day in the career that I trained for. So probably I would have to say up through that powerlifting experience, I just liked it. I mean, athletics and athletic preparation had just been a part of my life previously, and I just never stopped it. I may have done things different than I had done otherwise, but I liked lifting weights. I liked training. I shouldn't say never. There was seldom a day that I went to the gym that I didn't want to go. I may not have done everything that I had intended when I set out to go, but I went because I wanted to, not because I had to. So that was up to when I changed jobs. After I retired, I knew that I needed to go. I do not have a good family history in terms of health. My mother had bypass surgery in her mid-50s. My younger brother had bypass surgery in his 50s. He dropped dead when he was 60 of a massive coronary. So I knew that I needed to take care of my health. And that has sort of trended upward the older that I've gotten. So I went back because I needed to. But the discovery of kettlebells and and a good mentor brought me back to the, I'd like to go to the gym 3 or 4 times a week. So I don't know how to answer your question except to say that it's just always been part of something of my DNA, I guess, except for the period of time where it just wasn't tenable. I mean, I who wants to work on a treadmill in a hotel? You know, I mean, it's just like, it just wasn't my kind of thing. So aside from that gap, it's just been part of my life, and it still is in one form or another.
I've got a question about that gap, because I've done something similar. I'm nearly 45 now. So I'm getting to that. I'm at that age where you had said you stopped and then had 15 years off, basically. I had that 15 years off earlier in my life, and I didn't do anything at school and all that, and worked really hard. And now I've tried to manage my lifestyle around being able to keep fit and healthy, because I know it matters when I get to your age, right? When I get to 60 and then beyond, it's going to matter what I do now. So what would you say to someone who, because like you say in your retirement as well, you can wind down, or you can do whatever you like, which is what you did, right? Like, I want to do this, so I'm going to go and do that. But the way I try to live is, why can't I do that now around everything else that I'm doing? Do what I want to do and do it now. And then I can still do that in 20, 30, 40 years time. So what would you say to your younger self? And what would you say to somebody now who say like me in the mid 40s, to say, like, you know, I went and got a job and worked these long hours, and would you do the same again, or would you do it differently? You know, what sort of advice would you give?
Well, if you mean by younger self, at the time I stopped, I would say, you old fool, why did you do that?
Yeah.
And I think because coming back from it was long and painful. I said, who wants to walk on a treadmill in a hotel room? I don't think I was honest with myself about the time I had available. And I was president of a company. I traveled a lot. I was in airplanes. I stayed in hotels. I ate fancy meals, or I didn't eat at all. I mean, everything that you would think would get in the way of living a healthy lifestyle did, except I did have time if I wouldn't have been willing to make it. And so,
why weren't you
in
willing?
some way, pardon me?
Why weren't you willing to make it at that time?
I'm going to go back to what I said about big goals. I mean, this new job came immediately following that National Masters Powerlifting meet. I was tired. I didn't want to lift weights. I'd had enough. I didn't know quite what else to do with myself. I mean, I could go back into the hotel gym and probably do hammer curls again, because they probably had some dumbbells in there, but the motivation just wasn't there. And I don't know any other way to say it other than I think I didn't care, to tell you the truth. And I think there's a certain degree of confidence that you had that you can come back anytime. And the longer the gap, the harder that is. And so my answer to what would you say to that 45-year-old, I would say you could have been a lot smarter than that, because you could have found things. But I didn't have a trainer. I didn't have anybody pushing me, and I wasn't willing to push myself. So now the whole world kind of changes, because you're not training for performance. You're training for health. And that's a different perspective. And it can be a big motivator for you, particularly with someone that has a family history like I do. But at the same time, when I finished SFG, I was feeling pretty good about myself. In fact, I was a little bit cocky about myself, to tell you the truth. I was going to go on a mission to get in every gym that I could get in to help convince people like you to pay more attention to older men and women. And I wanted to do that so badly. And I went to a few small gyms and people were somewhat responsive. When I went to the larger gyms, it was like, who is this old coot and who is he to come in here and tell us how we want to train and who we want to train? And usually I was talking to a 22-year-old with a red t-shirt on that said personal trainer on the back of it. And I frankly had serious doubts about how much preparation they had. And I kind of figured I knew a lot more about everything than what they did, but I wasn't welcome. I never found a larger facility where I gained any entree whatsoever. I was going to bring my own kettlebells. I was going to teach them trainers how to use them. I was going to help them create an environment in which they might be more attractive to older people, and it didn't work. So I just backed away from all of that and decided to stop trying to take care of everybody else and just take care of myself. And that's pretty much the way it's been since then. So.
You're on mute, James. Are you trying to talk? Oh,
James
James just left.
Oh, sorry, James. I didn't mean to make you mad. If that red t-shirt thing hadn't pertained to you, I'm sorry.
Yeah, he's like, right, I'm on that with me. The thing is, though, that might have been him. I was about to say, well, I wasn't about, like, as you were talking there, it just reminded me, because my dad would have been a similar age to you. He was born in 1939, so I think he would have been, no, 38. He would have been nearly 83 now. He died when he was 65, unfortunately. But I always, when I was in my teens and 20s, he didn't know anything. I knew everything and he didn't know anything. And then now I'm like, I wish I'd have listened to him, you know, which is why I like talking to guys like you, because it's like, you know, you're the guy to listen to because you've been there and you've done it. You've had the time off. You've come back when you're 60 to prove it's never too late as well. You're still here now. You know, it's brilliant. It's not, I love it. And then what you've just said about you reached the goal at 45, you know, you reached your goal, you did a powerlifting meet, you came third. And then it's where next. And this is what we're talking to people about a lot, because you get to a certain age, whatever age that may be, where you've done training for a number of years, be it 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, you've hit some goals, and then you actually go, right, where does this go? Where does it go next? What do I do? I've reached a goal. And that's, Rick talks about this a lot as well, actually, doesn't he? You've reached the peak, and there's a couple of ways of coming down. You either fall off or you ease off, so then you can reach the next peak. But you always have to be thinking about what the goal is after the one you reach, because otherwise it's just an end point, and then you stop, which is what you did. So that's why I like listening to people with experience, because I'm at that age now where actually I realize that's hugely valuable.
The graph you just drew is pretty much an accurate reflection of, excuse me, of my life and training. It was up and down and up and down and up and down and up and down. What was important, with the exception of the gap, was that if you were to draw a straight line, it was ascending all the time.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you how or why I did that. I think it goes back to the question about why, and it's because it's just what I've done, and I like that, and I still feel that same way. It's that line may not be ascending at the same angle that it was, but if you have whether it's a definitive goal or whether it's just a positive motivation for healthy living as opposed to performance, that sets some parameters. And those parameters that, if you are committed to them, help you make day-to-day decisions about everything else. You know, what am I going to eat? Am I going to drink every night? Am I going to drive too fast? Any of those things that have a negative to them in terms of your health and longevity, you have the opportunity to make a choice about every time you're confronted with that choice. If you have positive personal living goals, there's the rules right there. Once you know your rules, then you make choices easier on those other things that come along. And I think that's what I would try to say to an older person if I were bringing them into my program. I would talk about, let's see what your rules ought to be. Let's see what your parameters should be. Let's mutually agree between you and I on what we can do to help you set those parameters. Then it's your job to make the choices within the parameters that we've set. And I don't know if that answers the question or not. I mean, the question is, what would you have said before and what would you say now? And I think that's what I'd say now anyway.
No, that answers the question. That's great. James, you're on.
James is having a bit of trouble with his microphone. Yeah, there we go. So anyway, Jim, so one of the things you worked in was, you said you were CFO, CEO?
I was president of
yeah.
business, and I was a CFO of a college.
So with that comes a huge amount of responsibility. And what I'm noticing with my client base from the ages of 35 to 65 is that they're just incredibly busy people, and they've achieved a certain amount of success, but often they've parked their health and on the back of that success. So they know they've only got so much energy. Maybe they've got families, they've got social lives, etc. And they've made a decision at some point to put most of their energy into their career, and for good reason, because they've become successful, they've created stability in their home, for the family. But it often means that they come to me quite a bit on the back foot when it comes to their health, going, you know what, I kind of need to do something now. I'm a bit stressed out. I've got too much weight, blood pressure's up, all these markers, they're all crazy, or I've got diabetes, or I've got a lot of injuries and back pain. What would you be? I mean, now you're removed from that period of your life. You know, you spent the years being retired. Looking back, I mean, what would you advise someone on how to gain perspective on how to integrate their health while still achieving success at work?
It's a very individual thing. And I think it has a lot to do with a personality, expectations, why you have the kind of jobs you have, what drives you. But there's a base, I think, and that is, how do you feel physically? Most people in circumstances like that would say, I don't feel that good. I get up in the morning, I'm cranked, I go all day, I don't go to sleep at night. I get heart palpitations every now and then, and every once in a while I get some real life serious problems. And I've sort of adopted a long time ago, this theory of, and it's, you guys know all this, but of paying attention to your body. What's your body telling you? And your body probably speaks to you more clearly than anybody else does if you know how to listen to it. So you learn things like, I'm not getting enough sleep. I'm not getting enough quality sleep. I'm not eating well. I don't feel as good as I should be feeling. I don't have energy for my family. And when your awareness increases on things like that, maybe you say to yourself, I have to manage my work life a little bit better because I'm focusing on the wrong things. Not the wrong things, but I need to redirect my energy. So I think that's what I would try to say to somebody. I try to say, let's talk about some things we can do that will help you feel better. Let's talk about some things that will allow you to have more energy. Let's talk about some things that are important. How much time are you spending with your family? What's the age of your children? What are you doing? Anyway, I'm doing this off the top of my head, but it's intended to set a perspective that allows you to step in and do what you do well with them, which otherwise is hindered because they're not making time for you either. I mean, they came to you for a reason. So let's capitalize on that reason. You just have to find out what the reason was. And it's probably not because I want to lose 20 pounds. It's probably deeper than that. And you got to dig that out. And that's why the rapport between a trainer and an older person is so incredibly important. I think it might be more important than the rapport that you establish with the people that come to your classes or your younger people that are part of your program. But the rapport with a trainer is what carries you through on and on and on and on. And it carries you through. If you're a good trainer, you need to recognize that older people have nagging injuries. Where the hell did that bad back come from? You know, why is my shoulder sore? Well, a young person comes back 2 days later and says, I'm ready to go again. An older person, you may need to redirect all of your energies for months. But it comes from the rapport that's established between you and that person. So the long answer to your question is find out why they came in, really, then direct your energies in the way that you're best trained to bring them in a direction where they bring their life into a perspective that causes them to sleep better and feel better and have more energy.
Can you hear me? Yes, you can hear me. Sorry, I've had problems with my mic. I keep moving it from place to place. So what I was going to say, Jim, about your story, which was, I think, lots and lots of people will be able to relate to, is that up until that stage where you happen to be 45, but other people may have been, 35 or 40 or 30, people tend to be more active earlier in life, and then something happens, and a lot of the time it's, they get married or they have kids or they get a job with more responsibility and they stop being active, just as you did. But the thing is that the vast majority of people never make that decision that you made at kind of 60 or later in life to get back into trying to be more physically active. I think, like you say, that kind of 15-year gap for most people, if they stop doing it for 15 years, they're not going to come back from that. So I think the conversation you said you would have had with a younger you about not stopping at that stage is probably far easier than, like you said, trying to restart 15 years later, and the amount of difficulty you had and the pain you had and just everything, just trying to get going again after a 15-year layoff. So that's hugely inspiring that you did that, but that is very, very unusual, isn't it? I mean, do you have many friends who have done that, who have kind of had a 15, 20-year layoff and then certainly gone back to exercise at the level that you went back to it to get your Strongfirst certification. I mean, that's fairly unique, I'd imagine.
Well, I'm going to say no. I don't have friends that have done that, but I want to kind of turn it back on you guys and say, geez, isn't that an auspicious moment for you to try to find a way to keep people engaged and active and amend their training program to fit the reality of their work life, if you can. And just, I mean, it seems to me that sustaining clients over the years is a hell of a lot easier than attracting new ones to come in. And if you can find a way to take that person who's about to bail on you for one reason or another and redirect them into some kind of minimal activity, whatever, that sustains them through the tough part of their career, if you can keep them coming in, why not? I mean, I throw that out to you as a challenge because I think I didn't have anybody like that. At my stage of life, there weren't people doing what you people do now. And if you can attract those sustaining individuals, well, that's good for your business. It's good for you. And it's especially good for them. And it goes back to this rapport thing, I think, too.
What are you doing since the sort of pandemic and since various lockdowns that I presume you've had where you are as well, Jim, in terms of training? Where are you at now with things? Do you have any goals at the moment that that are on your radar?
Well, I'm looking at things as a maintenance program for me, as best I can say it. And I've got an old Schwinn Airdyne bike in the basement. I've got kettlebells down there. I've got some dumbbells. I'm in an area where I can walk as much as I want to. And all of those are things which I just do. I mean, it's not programmed. It's when I'm doing things well, I have like a 2 days on, 1 day off mentality. And I mentioned earlier this listening to your body thing. If I go down to the basement and feel like I'm going to do a good workout, I do. If I go down and I think, I just don't have it today, I'll get on the bike for 20 minutes and quit. I mean, it's just, I don't have any real goals or objectives other than eating better, sleeping better, and feeling better. So,
well, they're pretty good ones to have, aren't they, Jim? I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I dabble in things. I mean, you probably saw some of the bending stuff that I did. That's stuff that's fun, and it's not only technique, but it's also some training that's related to that. And that old junior high school coach still motivates me to do hammer curls for some reason. So I don't know why I'm interested in beach muscles anymore at my age, but nevertheless, I still do hammer curls. I'm still hoping to grow some biceps, I guess, but.
Well, the reason why you haven't got biceps is because you had 15 years off. Otherwise, they would have been massive, wouldn't they?
Well, thanks for giving me one more reason why I should never have quit. So
the thing is, your peer group, it's what you do is quite exceptional, and you're surrounded by people who think of you a bit of a madman, thinking, "Why are you doing this?" Because there's water aerobics, there's these kind of other things that are typically for anyone over the age of 60. You see on the telly sales channels, stuff where you're sitting down doing curls with some kind of piece of rope stuck to a chair. And there you are bending nails.
Have any of you ever done any bending?
No, I've not. I've seen it obviously a lot. And I was gonna ask you about that. Yeah, because I know you did get quite into it, didn't you, for a period, I think. Oh,
That's a 7.5-inch quarter round cold rolled steel. And that's about halfway up the ladder of achievement in bending. You can't call yourself a bender in the crowd that's successful until you can bend a 60 penny nail, which is 1/4 inch cold rolled steel, 6 inches long. And of course, the shorter they become, the more difficult the leverage. So
is that where you really wrap them up, don't you? With leather or something on to get a good, oh, you're going to do a bend here. Oh,
never done one sitting down.
If
Live.
people are watching on YouTube, oh.
Easy. Easy. Well, there we go.
So
that's a first for the Health Odyssey podcast.
Wait a second, Jim, talk, because
this is a yellow nail. I don't know if you can see the yellow in. The sequence of nails by Iron Mind is green, yellow, I don't have a blue one here, and red. And they're different lengths and different diameters. I blew through the green one like there was nothing to it. I went to the yellow one. It took me a couple weeks before I could do that. The blue one was a challenge, and that's the equivalent of what the next step up from what I just did. And then there's this red bastard here.
Have you bent that, have you?
No. The hardest part of bending for me has always been the start of it, the kink, as we call it. So I put this in a vise and bent it, thinking that I may not be able to kink it, but maybe I could finish it. That's a goal that I will never achieve in my lifetime. I thought that since I was the oldest person in the world that did SFG level 1, I should be the oldest person in the world to bend the red nail. That was another one of those foolish goals that I talked about earlier. So that's not going to happen. But anyway.
Do you ever use, Jim, have you used the Captains of Crush hand grippers?
I used them for quite a while.
Yeah.
And a friend of mine, I never tried to work my way up the levels. I'd sit around and watching TV using those. But actually it was part of the bending thing, because part of bending is you really have to develop the soft tissue of your hands. That's why you wear a wrap around the ends, because otherwise you potentially stab yourself. And so you use a leather suede wrap. The captain,
it would ruin my hand modeling career.
Yeah, correct. Is that your fallback position if this doesn't work out for you?
Yeah. I've staked a lot on him.
Yeah,
Maybe
you got to develop the soft tissue in your hands and your forearms, because you can't just bend something like that without doing damage. So the Captains of Crunch for me were not to try to move up the ladder. It was just to
condition the hands.
Yeah. I was listening to Dave Whitley, the Iron Tamer, on a podcast just this morning, actually. And he was talking about like bending stuff and everything, because he obviously does that. And he said, it hurts. He said, don't let anyone tell you that. I don't know, because I don't do it, but it hurts apparently. And then he said about Dennis Rogers, who's like a famous strong man, isn't he? Who's not that big, but he's ridiculously strong. And he drives nails through wood with his hand. Been doing it for years. And he said it just so happened he caught it on video as well. He was doing it at a show, and he didn't set it up right, and he drove the head of the nail into his hand rather than the nail through the wood. It was like, ooh, yeah. So Yeah, you do need to develop the soft tissue, otherwise, like you're gonna get a bit of an injury.
And
Aren't you?
Dave was my coach for the bending, so I have to give him credit for all that.
We're
Excellent.
we're hoping to get Dave on the podcast at some stage. So yeah, that would be fantastic.
Well, that'll be a philosophical question for you, discussion for you. So once Dave gets started on the mental aspects of everything.
Yeah,
that's the big question, isn't it? Really, that's what holds people a lot back. You know, we can talk endlessly about techniques, but really, you know, the biggest muscle is the brain, isn't it? And kind of how you enter any decision making and kind of the thought processes. You can set yourself up for failure straight away.
That really goes right to the heart of everything I wish I had time to say. I mean, if you go back, and Tim Anderson and I did 2 podcasts, and the second one, we talked about the mental aspects of training as you age. And it goes back to my comment about having sufficient clarity that it sets the parameters in which you make all the other choices for your life. And you're absolutely right. I mean, it's weightlifting is and training is here. It's not here, it's here.
Yeah.
And that's where
that sounds like that's a perfect sort of place to start to wrap up today, and maybe to invite you back on again, Jim, to talk about the mental aspects of training as we age, because I think the majority of my members are over 50, and we've got quite a few now in their 70s. So I think that would be hugely interesting and fascinating and beneficial to maybe see if we can get you back on in the future, if you'd be up for that.
Oh, I'm happy to do it. I feel like I rambled a lot today, but it's a journey. It's just something you need to want to do, and good trainers can help you do that. And I just hope people who are listening will recognize that you can start anywhere. You can start anytime. All it is just a start. And you don't need to be afraid of it. You need to be encouraged by it, and you need to make it part of the way you live your life. And then I'll just leave you with one quick thing, and that is, in retirement, you need to have variety in what you do. You need to have an avocation if you want something else to do. You need to fill your time with things that are satisfying to you, or physically or primarily mentally challenging for you. Otherwise, you're going to sit down. And if you sit down, you just might not get up again. And that's not to instill fear. It's to say, I did some arithmetic, and I figured out after you sleep well and eat well, you've still got 92 hours every week in which you need to do something. Well, what the hell are you going to do for 92 hours? If you sit down for 91 of them, that's just not good. And you've got to find physical things to keep you physically active. If you fall down, you need to be able to get up. And mentally, it's the same thing. If you shut down mentally, it's hard to, if not impossible, to open back up again. So it's a multi-part way of using the hours that you have available in a good way. Your family, your spouse, your grandchildren, your physical activity and your mental activity, they ought to keep you pretty happy most of the time if you're doing them. And if you're not, you're just going to sit down and wither away to nothing. The end.
Yeah. Jim, that's been so fascinating and inspiring, and it's just been a pleasure really to spend an hour talking with you. You know, it's been absolutely brilliant. Pete, do you have any kind of thoughts or any final things to say?
You know what I'll do this time? Because you just say no and then come up with something anyway. But no, that was brilliant. I've loved that. That was a great hour because it's it's the benefit of experience which we all need. You know, we can all think we know what we're talking about, but someone else who's got the experience is always knows, right? Always knows what the experience is. And like Jim said before we even started recording, he was like, I want everyone to know I'm not a trainer and all that. This is just my take on how I did things. But that's what everyone's is. It doesn't matter if you're a trainer or not, or you're being trained by a trainer or not. You're getting their perspective on how things should be done for you or for them or whatever, you know. So, you know, I just love that. It'd be great to have you back on as well, Jim. Definitely. I was thinking that as soon as you said you started talking about the mental side of it, I was like, yes, there's podcast number 2 with Jim.
Mr. Paul Bassett, do you have a final thought or anything you'd like to say?
Yeah, I mean, I run like a 28-day program, and I've got 3-month and 6-month memberships. People often think about their health journey in terms of those kind of time commitments. And really, it's just completely wrong way of approaching it. I mean, I understand when people are thinking about budget, they think, okay, I can budget this for this much time, but we're not really trying to. You can't achieve the kind of health of a lifetime in a condensed time. And so your perspective on what you're learning and these are applying consistently in different phases in your life are really, really interesting. And they're definitely the lessons I want to try and put onto my clients. You know, that even if you're with a trainer for a short period of time, because I know you'd work with trainers for periods of time, you ran with it. It's not just that you did it for 3 months. You know, you did your RKC kettlebell training for a couple of months, and then as soon as the trainer wasn't there, you stopped doing it. You just kept going. You ran with it. You took that education and empowered yourself with it. And I think that's the mindset you need to come into any fitness program. Otherwise, you're always going to go for that boom and bust, and there's only so long you can do it. There's going to be periods when you can't put as much focus into your training as other times, maybe work, family, etc. There's always going to be a commitment that could potentially get in the way. But as the lesson that you've learned is like, never turn that switch off. You know, always have something, even if it's just a baseline, just ticking over until you can get back on track. But it's funny because I've just been listening to a load of music, and everyone should check out. There's 2 guys who did this, they're called Pete and Baz, and they're grime artists. Well, actually, they do a kind of style called drill, and they're 72 years old, right? So they're 72. You should check it out. It's crazy stuff. But Pete and Baz, you would never know if you listen to the music and then you watch their videos, you would never know their age, right? And it's just, there's no reason why you can't be at optimal creativity, optimal health, at whatever age. So yeah, anyway.
As long as you don't let the fog set in to begin with. That's the biggest issue. So
cool.
That's it.
Thank you so much, Jim. And thank you everybody for listening. Jim, it's been an absolute pleasure. It really has. And we'll definitely set up that second visit with you in not too distant future. So I just want to say thank you very much, guys, for listening. Please make sure you please make sure you subscribe wherever you listen. If you have the facility to leave a review, please leave a review, and please share the podcast with friends and family, and anyone who you feel could benefit. We really are trying to reach as many people as we can, and we're not just out there trying to talk to trainers and coaches. We are really trying to impact and reach normal people in their 40s, their 50s, their 60s, their 70s, who want to improve their health and take some of the lessons that Jim has been talking about today to make their life better, more energy, more vitality as we get older. So thank you very much, Mr. Peter Lant. Do you want to say goodbye?
Goodbye. Quick thing though, if anyone's got any questions that they want for Jim for the next podcast, or anyone else, any other guests we've had on, ask away in the group. We'll post the Facebook group. We'll post a link to it in the show notes.
Excellent. And thank you very much, Mr. Paul Bassett. Do you want to say goodbye?
Bye.
And Mr. Jim Hatcher, all the way from just outside Chicago in the USA, thank you so much for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much, Jim.
Happy to do it. We'll do it again.
Cool. Thank you, guys. We will see you again next week on the Health Oddity podcast, episode 41. See you later.
You've been listening to Health Odyssey with Peter Lant, Paul Bassett, and James St. Pierre. To get your regular fix of hype-free health, you can subscribe and leave a review wherever you get your favorite podcasts. You can find out more on today's and other topics at healthodyssey.com or find us on Facebook or Instagram by searching for Health Oddity.